By far, the most complicated part of League of Legends is teamfighting. You're just presented with a million different options all at once. Do I go in on Pike here? Do I peel? Do I make space by moving forward? What targets do I focus? You get the idea. Because of how complicated it is, it's no surprise that most players will be able to get leads in the early game, but struggle to close. If that sounds familiar, then keep watching. Knowing how to teamfight is a crucial skill, but the easiest thing to do is to put yourself in situations that avoid teamfighting altogether. Work smarter, not harder, is the saying after all. Let's watch a clip from a Smurf game that I was playing in Platinum so you can see how a challenger's perspective is very different from the average player. Let's start right before Baron spawns. So my game plan is to set up topside vision and stop our opponents from walking in easily. That would set us up for an easy pick with our Ashe, Rakan, or Lissandra ults. Unfortunately, all of my teammates are on the wrong side of the map here, so I need to do a bit of extra work to make sure that happens. Shoving out mid will reveal someone as they come to answer the wave, and that will give us info to make this pick since we can see who's isolated. So I start doing that as soon as possible. Unfortunately, because no one is topside, Darius is able to walk through our vision now with no punish. Fortunately though, Lee Sin shows on map seconds later, heading back towards mid lane. That pink that I placed earlier is about to pay off in a very big way. Because I pushed the wave mid and have a pink in the opponent's topside jungle, I can clearly see 3 members of the enemy team hanging out around mid. And this means that we have the inner track towards top lane and will always be able to see our opponents rotate over if they start trying to chase, which could lead to even more picks. However, you can very clearly see the disconnect in our game plans as things start to fall apart. Ashe and Liss, seeing the pink that I placed, get the idea to camp it and kill someone as they walk in. This play was definitely not what I had in mind, and we go back and forth spam pinging each other on which one to do. Rakan ends up going with me to pick off the Darius, but unfortunately, Liss dies as Ashe limps away in the ensuing trap that they essentially set for themselves. Lissandra actually got quite annoyed at this and types out exactly what I did not want to do in this situation. So I know what you're thinking. Wouldn't it be fine to just camp the bush with them and look for the fight? And the answer is maybe. Even with how things turned out, the team fight was won, just because I'm super strong. But even so, I would have liked to avoid having to even fight in the first place, because the easiest way to win is often the best. So of course, we might have won, but that's the problem. It was always just a maybe. So why do I say that my play was better here? Let's look back. At this point, if we go after Darius, it is completely impossible for the enemy team to bail him out. We just have too much tempo on this play for them to deal with, and we will always kill him before our opponents can do anything about it. If we instead choose to camp the bush, we can put ourselves in a very awkward spot. The first thing to notice is that Kayle isn't even here yet. So at best, we're fighting 4v4. At worst, Darius actually walks down from top lane to the fight, and we'll find ourselves in a 4v5 with Darius on top of our backline. This sort of situation where a kind of sandwich is made with enemies on both sides of you is not only extremely common, but the exact situation that almost every player fails to execute in, just like Lissandra and Ashe did in this game. This is caused by the fact that you probably think of team fights as, well, a team fight, when in reality, many of these are going to just be a cluster of 1v1s, 2v2s, and many smaller engagements that when combined together result in a bigger picture. Often, the reason a player can't climb higher ranks is simply because they've never heard of concepts like these. Imagine climbing not because you play more, but because you play smarter. Well, you can. We offer a subscription service designed to radically accelerate your progress in League of Legends. With exclusive courses covering advanced tactics and strategies you've never even heard of, live commentaries where a challenger player teaches you how to escape the exact rank you're stuck in, and one-on-one coaching, we've got all the tools to supercharge your improvement. The best part, our service is completely risk-free to try as you're kept safe with rank up insurance. If you don't significantly improve while actively using skill caps, then you get your money back, no questions asked. Click the link in the description below to start improving fast and get the rank you've always wanted. All right, so now let's take a look at a replay from a Diamond student of mine to show a good example of why understanding the sandwich technique is so important. He almost finds a pick onto the enemy jungler as she barely escapes by flashing away. But now we're left with a very complicated situation. Let's cut to the live recording of this game quickly, and I just want you to hear what I'm focused on at this moment.
You can play this slow here. Look at LeBlanc, look at LeBlanc, just stay close enough.
So why do I care so much about what LeBlanc is doing here? Well, it's because her target selection will completely alter the way that I want to play the fight. What's happening is that a majority of our team is in river, and the majority of the enemy team is right above us. But each team also has one player that's slightly off to the side, threatening a flank. This situation is just a more complicated version of that sandwich that I was explaining earlier, because depending on where LeBlanc decides to go, the sandwich will change. Bear with me here, even if this seems complicated at first. If she moves to collapse on the larger group, and we do as well, the enemy team is going to have massive complications dealing with LeBlanc on their backline, while they try to fight us from the front. This is just a sandwich that ignores Alawi, but it is only one of the variations of what could happen. LeBlanc could also decide to collapse on Alawi, and in that case, us moving down would force Alawi into a literal 1v5. It could also happen where Alawi collapses on LeBlanc as her team moves in as well, and LeBlanc would essentially just be forced to run for her life here. Same thing if the enemy team and Alawi decided to move in on us at the same time. While there are technically 4 groups of people in this fight, it will very quickly derail into a complete mess if you aren't looking for the right thing. This is not only in this team fight or just a LeBlanc thing. We just have to pay careful attention to what the other group of our team is doing, because they essentially determine the group that we need to target. Even though I had mentioned to watch LeBlanc, it wasn't understood in the game why I was saying to do that. In the actual game, notice what Shaco and all of his teammates were focused on here. They were moving up to try and deal with Aesol. Now listen to the absolute panic I had when I realized what was happening. Look at LeBlanc, look at LeBlanc, look at LeBlanc. Alawi was almost completely ignored by everyone but LeBlanc here. And had his team even been slightly later in coming to this, it's possible that Alawi would have beaten LeBlanc or gotten to collapse on our team, causing a catastrophic fight. Of course, Cassante was tunnel visioned on Aesol and ends up getting picked off for no reason, pretty much exactly how Lissandra died in my Shyvana game earlier. Essentially, large-scale messy fights like this are really hard to figure out what to do unless you're looking for this idea of creating a sandwich and picking off the isolated members. There are going to be fights that you're forced to take because you're pinched in between multiple groups, but listen, my previous example wasn't in that situation, and neither was Cassante here. They had a place to retreat to, whereas the targets that I wanted to go on did not. Darius was pinned up against the wall with nowhere to go, and Alawi was simply pinned between all 5 members of our team. These are the kinds of fights that are good to take. When your opponent has no option on where to go, they can't fight carefully or take their time to wait for key abilities to land. They just have to hope for the best, and this is what gives you the greatest odds of success. If you don't collapse and simply allow for multiple fights to break out at once, you are just asking for chaotic games that you have no control over. If our group simply ignored LeBlanc and ran into the group above, we just have a 4v4 and a 1v1 happening at the same time. It's not really the way a team fight should be, where target selection should switch depending on the situation. Let's watch a challenger game to see some amazing team fighting in action and break down why players are making the decisions that they're making. The goal should always be to create a fight that is impossible for your opponents from the start, just by having numbers advantage. Let's follow along with Zoe here as she's looking for control of the enemy jungle. Once her and Kindred are forced out, she finds a great angle to bubble Kai'Sa, but quickly realizes the dire situation that she's in. If we zoom out, we can look at the groupings of each team. Zoe finds herself sandwiched between members of the enemy team, but this is where quick thinking can often save you. She flashes in to try and kill Kai'Sa, but even upon failing the kill, doesn't stop moving. She continues to try to shift the fight in a direction that will benefit her team and not allow the pinch on her to happen. She could run straight down here and probably live, but she's trying to move upwards because she's tracking where her teammates are. Alistar is lying in Fog of War, ready to engage, and she's baiting Talia and Rel right into a sandwich between Alistar and Samira. Of course, this small, rather innocuous decision completely turns this fight and leads to Samira wiping the floor with everyone. Zoe went from being in a terrible situation to finding how to salvage the play by turning it around on her opponents. If we look further in this same game, we'll see another great example that shows the idea of collapsing on the right targets. There are once again multiple groups of teammates here, with Kai'Sa and Rel being clustered together, and Fiora trying to escape on the side. While Samira initially tries to chase after Fiora, once she's dead, she quickly turns targets to focus on Rel. It's at this exact moment that Kai'Sa decides to ult in and finish off the low HP Kindred. If this weren't in Challenger, I know exactly what would happen here. I don't want to rag on gold players, diamond players, or anyone else because I know how hard this is to do in a real game. But I see so many fights where an entire 1v1 just gets ignored because there's other stuff happening. This example and the previous ones are proof of that. But you have to be able to quickly identify where the groups of enemies are so you can turn to help teammates and pick off targets efficiently. Kennen got completely left to die here in Diamond Elo, and just one teammate seeing that Warwick was in a position to be collapsed on would have changed everything. Yet I bet that literally no one here had their camera even seeing him. Of course, in the Challenger game, Samira already knew that Zoe was on the side that Rel needed in order to escape to safety, and so she instantly turns to help Kennen deal with the Kai'Sa. Her help wasn't even needed here, but but it's the fact that she can guarantee not only this play, but Rel's death at the same time, just by choosing her target correctly. That's so important. Before fights start, make a mental note of where players are beforehand, and look for teammates of yours that you need to keep an eye on. If you lose track of your own teammates, you have no way of knowing where it is that the fight needs to take place, or even what could go wrong. You can capitalize on tunnel vision from your opponents by forcing collapses on isolated members, and also not walking into fights that you will be collapsed on yourself. Any chance you have to create a numbers advantage for yourself is a team fight that isn't fair for your opponents. And that is exactly what will let you start to carry team fights and your games. All right, before we wrap up, let's address the elephant in the room. The feeling of being stuck at your current rank. We all know how frustrating it can be, but what if you could take a shortcut to understanding the game on a deeper level, gaining ranks faster than you ever thought possible? Our subscription service not only offers the highest number of courses available online, covering literally everything you could ever want to know about the game, but they're also specifically designed to accelerate your improvement as fast as possible. Click the link in the description below to unlock the most extensive and effective training resources you'll ever find. All right, that's a wrap on this one, guys. We here at SkillCaps want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.